and let what others say come true. We're just good for nothing. They all figure a boyish grown up shiftless jigger. Now we can't.
What would an apocalypse reveal if we were to be in the midst of such an apocalypse? Well, I think we're seeing what the apocalypse in this country is revealing. I hope that you are being exposed to the fact that this country and this government and this whole Western civilization business is not what you thought it was. It's not what they told you it was. The great empires are not great like they claim. They didn't bring civilization, not this empire, whether people think of the United States as an empire or not, but this government does have colonies, right? Because Guam and Puerto Rico, yeah, and there's this neo-colonialism that this country and other countries, the former original colonial powers, Britain, France, Brussels, Portugal, all of those folks, Germany, all of those folks who scrambled, met in Europe somewhere to divide up Africa, to divide up China, to divide up the global South, to create neo colonies through the control of corporate interests, usually through mining operations in countries that were the former colonies of these European powers. Yes, the United States is also, the United States being a former colony of Britain itself, happily joined in the support of the original colonists in continuing what is now the neo colonial scramble for Africa, Asia, and the global South. That's what's going on now, where we see France in Africa, as we talked about last week, or as the members of Black Alliance for Peace talked about last week in Kenya. That's why France is having a conference in Kenya with African, and Emmanuel Macron is calling himself and calling France the original Pan-Africanists, because they are carrying on neo-colonialism on the continent, where they used to have direct colonies through military invasion, occupation, and military rule over the indigenous population. Now, France and these former European colonialists and even the United States, they don't colonize that way. They colonize through mining operations. They colonize through imposing puppet leaders in these countries. They colonize through the US and European military presence in and around these countries to continue to have an element of military control that all forms of colonization have to have in order to maintain their control over these formerly directly colonially controlled territories. So the United States is now taking the place of Britain, of the former a Western colonial power. Now the United States is the Western colonial power, and they are doing the exact same thing that the British colonists did to the countries that it colonized and the people in them. And we see the US and their malign influence on the rest of the countries in the world, even through a thing that we love called sports. We do. We see it in this country, in the politics of today, even with something as absolutely ridiculous as the president of the United States, because I feel really I'm starting to feel ill calling his name. I don't want to do it, but I know I have to. But you know, the president of the United States erecting a UFC stage, a cage on the White House lawn. I mean, I kind of like UFC, so it kind of bothers me that 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 there's going to be a UFC match on the White House lawn. But you know, UFC, this is kind of the besmirching of sport. Not that UFC was all that clean for right. There are plenty of problems, but I'm a weirdo, so we've established that. But sport is not immune from political influence. And that's why we have to have this conversation today, because we are about to be besieged by something that I really do enjoy. I'm learning more and more about this sport. Football, FUTBOL, or soccer, as we call it. We're not as familiar with it in the United States because we're a bunch of indoctrinated weirdos who only believe that football and baseball are actual real sports. But everybody else in the world, ladies and gentlemen, every working class and poor group of people in the world love themselves some soccer. It is the world's sport. And we're seeing the malign influence of politics even on the World Cup, one of the biggest sports events in the world, yes, even bigger than the stinking Super Bowl. And I am very glad that we are talking to a political aficionado. I'm not sure if he's a sports aficionado. We haven't figured that out yet. But Ajamu Baraka, who is an organizer with the North South of the North South Project for People's Centered Human Rights, has joined me today. And Ajamu, if you did not know, is the organizer for the Black Alliance for Peace, of which the North South Project for People Centered Human Rights is a project. Ajamu, thank you so much for joining me here on Darker Than Blue to talk about the beautiful game, the people's sport, and why the North South Project is involved in a campaign surrounding it.
Well, thank you so much, Jackie, for allowing me to rejoin you here on your outstanding program. And let me, pick up where you brought us. Many of us are followers of this game, I've been involved in football for a few decades now. And as you said, this the World Cup is in fact the biggest sporting event on the planet. There's no question about that. It is truly a world event as opposed to the kind of arrogance that we find in the U.S., where we have the quote unquote World Series and the World this and the World that, that only we only have U.S. teams participating. This is the real world, right? And so there's a lot of interest in this. The issue, though, it was a number of issues. One of the things you talked about or alluded to was the fact that you have this confluence between sport and politics. And it was important to point that out because there are many people who will argue that there is a separation, that sport is something that is pure, it rises above politics. There are no special interests involved in the sporting processes. Well, I mean, just a cursory understanding of how sport operates within the context of a world characterized by capitalist exchanges. You know, we'll put that to rest very quickly. FIFA and the World Cup is no different. One of the things with FIFA and the World Cup here in the U.S. For 2026 is that FIFA has been salivating at the ideal that it could come out of the World Cup experience with a profit of around $11 billion. Now, we argue that that's one of the reasons why they were so adamant about the games taking place in the U.S. It is the richest economy on the planet right now. Okay, so what do we do, and why are we here? What are we going to talk about this evening? Well, because of the World Cup coming to the U.S., this is where the political question comes in, the political issue comes in. Those of us in the Black Alliance of Peace felt that it was absolutely necessary for us to raise the issue of these games being proposed to take place in the U.S., a country that was and is actively engaged in supporting, perpetuating a genocide, a racial genocide in Gaza, that was systematically turning its back on the international community, withdrawing from various United Nations agencies, taking back funding for all kinds of activities that millions of people around the world were dependent on, violating all the international laws that have governed, in a sense, govern the civilized behavior, let's put it like that for a second, of most of the states on this planet. And basically operating as a consequence as a rogue state. When you operate beyond the bounds of legality, you are an outlaw. You become a rogue state. So here we have the U.S. being allowed to host the games where everybody knew and knows the history of this country. Everybody can see the role that it played in providing the material basis and political cover for the fascists in Israel. Everybody watched the invasion of Venezuela and the capturing of the president and the first lady. Everybody can see right now the application of Gaza tactics that they learned they can get away with in Gaza in terms of starving whole populations now being applied to Cuba. Everybody heard what Trump said when they unleashed ICE in Chicago. He said, this is a few days after they had just renamed the Department of Defense to the Department of War. Donald Trump said that we had a passing. Donald Trump said that in a few days, the people of Chicago will understand why we changed the name from the Department of Defense to the Department of War. In essence, declaring a war on the people of Chicago. And so we saw that take place. We saw the unleashing of ICE. We understand that part of the fascist agenda abroad requires the application of fascism within the U.S., making the U.S. a dangerous place to not only to live, but also to visit. And we said someone has to raise these obvious contradictions. And that's what we did. And we did this not only as a single organization, and through our human rights project, the North-South Project for People-Centered Human Rights, we started building from that project, building a coalition of forces that we knew felt the same way. And so we started moving to building what we named the Anti-Fascist Football Coalition. And the original demand, Jackie, was to move the games. Now that the games are happening, then we have a phase 2 of the project, and that's when we moved into the demand to basically boycott the games. That's where we are today.
So I'm glad you explained that in that way and got and talked about the different phases of this campaign, that there are phases that there, to this campaign. Because I'm seeing something right now in organizing, and maybe it's just in DC, maybe it's all over the country, but I have a feeling people don't understand what terms mean. So they're using terms and they're not doing what the terms mean. Like people are carrying out, they're saying, this is a general strike, and it's not. It's a one-day protest. This is a boycott, but we've got no plans. We've got no demands. We don't know why. So nothing kind of comes of it. They fizzle out, or there are, boycotts that are called that are strange. Like we've got a boycott being called by the NAACP for Black college student athletes to boycott Southern universities in the states that are targeted by the repeal of Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. We've got a boycott now of Asian businesses, all Asian businesses in the city where the 14-year-old boy was killed by the Asian business. So this boycott that is now a part of phase 2 of this campaign seems like it was organized and intentional and a plan. And there's so what is the difference, Ajamu, between building a campaign in phases? Why do that? As opposed to just what people do, they seem to just call a boycott and put it on social media and not do a whole lot else. But here you have talked about, you built a coalition, you you found and started working with people who think the way you do about these issues. You joined together, you created a campaign together, you planned phases. What was phase 1? Why did you have phase 1? How did you get to phase 2? Because I'm hoping people are asking these questions, because we need to know the answers, because I think we need to get off this hamster wheel of lack of organization and just calling for things to be done as if that's just how things are going to be fixed.
You're absolutely right, Jackie. That approach is the approach that many people take. And they take it, I think, Jackie, as a consequence of just a little lack of experience. That because we are living in this social media environment where people can generate attention by doing things, saying things in social media and generating attention to themselves, that you can do the same thing when you're trying to, in fact, build movement. Now, these social media outlets are powerful instruments, but there is a process that one has to engage in when you're trying to organize a political movement. And those phases you touched on, in terms of connecting up with people who have some of the same kinds of concerns, similar kinds of analysis, who may be willing to engage in some actions to address whatever the concerns that you all have raised, whatever the issues you have identified, and whatever the objectives you all will begin to move toward trying to realize. And so you begin to build, and that's what we did. We said that, we have an opportunity here because it is a obvious political and moral contradiction for the U.S., a rogue state, to be allowed to host these games. We understood that there was a political objective to this happening at this time. And what was that objective? That objective was basically to normalize the traversing red lines of civilizational behavior that up until this time served as a barrier, a break on the lawlessness, the barbarism of states. That there were certain kinds of norms that most states accepted that provided some degree of constraints on these states, like you don't starve populations, you don't attack civilian infrastructure, you don't drop a bomb, and you don't engage in indiscriminate bombing against civilian non-combatants. You don't torture, and you don't torture people to death. You don't use rape as a form of torture, both against women and against men and all others. You don't blow up hospitals. You don't attack civilians who are gathered around educational facilities. And you certainly don't, after you have denied a population food, allow a trickle of food to come into the area. People then line up or attempt to line up in order to get food to survive, and then you systematically open fire on them, killing scores of civilians. This is all that we saw from Gaza. This is what has now become normalized, or they're attempting to normalize that. So we say that a state that can facilitate that kind of behavior, that can also go beyond facilitating genocide and engage in imposing sanctions on governments, on people, that result in the loss of human life, that is destabilizing nations and peoples around the world, that has over 2 million people incarcerated in its own nation, that has the longest serving political prisoners and prisoners of war on the planet. A state that has demonstrated that has no commitment to any kind of life and no commitment to anything called human rights in the U.S. and abroad. We could not allow for that state to be given this responsibility, this prestige, to host the games without opposition. That was the basis of us building this coalition of forces from around the world who felt the same way. And again, we said the first demand had to be move the games. We engaged FIFA in that conversation. We identified organizations that felt the same way. Now that the games are going to take place, we go into phase 2. We say that the only logical position we can take at this point, politically and morally, is to oppose the games. If we demand you move the games, but you are committed to having the games take place, now we have to call on the international community to, in fact, boycott the games. We cannot allow them to normalize this kind of behavior. And we understand that there are people, as you said in your intro, who love the game. We all love the game. But we're not going to have this trade-off between a kind of bread and circus approach. You give the masses entertainment in order to provide some degree of stability while you engage in international lawlessness, undermining the dignity of peoples, undermining the ability of people to live in peace, undermining the most fundamental right of all, which is the right to life. that if you have a state engaged in that kind of activity, that basically they have to be called out. And that's what we're doing here in phase two. But, Jack, you understand this. Even though we made the call last week, first the Black Alliance for Peace made the call as an organization part of the coalition. And then this week, the entire coalition made a unanimous decision to join the Black Alliance for Peace in making the call to, in fact, boycott the games. That now we have to build out what that means. But we also understand that people are going to come to the U.S. There will be games taking place in the 11 cities where the games have been scheduled to happen. What about the situation of people who live in the communities around the stadium?
Right,
We
right.
know that ICE is being deployed and will be deployed in these cities. We know that they're going to deploy National Guard units. We know that there are going to be people who are coming into the country who don't represent as white, who can then be subjected to harassment from these vigilante and paramilitary forces connected to the U.S. state. We have to put in place mechanisms, because we are a human rights organization also, mechanisms to, in fact, protect the rights, the human rights of those individuals also. So we have a dual responsibility. So part of phase two isn't just the rhetorical call for boycott the games for the international community. We still have to continue to build the mechanisms on the local level to protect the fundamental human rights of people who are involved in this activity.
And see, that is organizing, folks who are listening. This is not, some esoteric exercise in, high-minded theory that everybody thinks that we just sit around and read. And I guess people just think we sit around, read Marx and Lenin and Gramsci, and just sit around quoting Marx, Lenin, and Gramsci to each other, and that's how we spend our time. But no, that's not. We actually do this work. We're actually identifying the areas where our people need to be, to have their consciousness elevated, or some type of support provided when they're coming into a hostile situation, or members of our community who recognize the contradictions of these games because they're living in ground zero with what Ajamu just said about ICE being deployed to these cities in order to do exactly what they've been doing. We don't just organize to finger wag at people and tell them you should have boycott. No, what are the mechanisms that people need in these places to support them while they're here, and to let them know, no, we recognize what's going on and here's this information. But our people here also, who are very committed and very close to the games, probably going to have watch parties. They're going to have watch parties for the games. Where are we going to be? That's the kind of thing that this is the kind of thing that we do. And before we go to our station break, John Moore, I want to backtrack just a little bit, because I think this is very important. When you said that in phase one, the project had a conversation with FIFA about moving the games. What does that explain what you meant? Because I know what it meant, but I want everybody else to understand what it meant. This is not just rhetoric, folks. This is not just we're saying things. There are real actions behind these words that dictate what the next move is. So, Ajamu, what did you mean when you said that PCHR and the Black Alliance for Peace had conversations with FIFA about moving the games?
Yeah, well, we had an interchange. We communicated with FIFA. We sent them a communication. We communicated to them what our concerns were. We made a very explicit demand that, based on FIFA's own protocols, its own procedures, and its declared values, and its past behavior in disallowing certain states to participate in FIFA sponsored games, that it had a responsibility to, in fact, move the games from the United States of America. They, of course, responded back and said, in essence, we appreciate your commentary, and we sent a very thorough analysis, laying out their own processes, their own procedures,
Yep.
principles.
Indeed, I saw it.
But no, thank you. We're about trying to raise some money. We're trying to make some profit. That was their response.
And didn't we do that? Didn't we send something to the IOC as well? Because that was, they were the target too.
Well, not yet, but that's another part of the conversation we're going to have this evening in terms of the foundation being laid in this campaign for 2028.
Oh, I just leaked some information that nobody should have known. Okay, forget that I said that. You didn't hear it. Forget that I said that. I get excited about our organizing sometimes. And for those of you who are just tuning in, never listened to Jackie Lukman or Darker Than Blue before, I do have to tell you that I am an organizer with the Black Alliance for Peace as well. So that's when I say we, I do mean that. So in this particular show, I am acting as my capacity as a journalist, but also as a member of my beloved organization, the Black Alliance for Peace, and my good comrade here. But it is 5:31, folks, and you know what that means. It is time for a WPFW station break. So, engineer extraordinaire, what do we have on tap for the people today? It better be some music too. There we go.
The WPFW local station board is holding a community town hall on Saturday, June 13th from 12 noon to 3 p.m. at New Bethany Baptist Church, 1300 10th Street, Northwest Washington, D.C. The agenda will focus on the well-being of the station, voting rights, community concerns, and the upcoming Pacifica Foundation elections. More information is online at WPFWFM.org or by emailing the local station board at WPFWLSB@WPFW.org.
Thank you so much, engineer extraordinaire. I really do love that WPFW is the station for jazz and justice. I am not good at music. Nobody wants me to sing anything, although in my shower, I sound amazing. And my dog loves the way I sing, but you will not. That is why it's great that we have music aficionados, we have jazz aficionados, we have ancient music aficionados, we have music from the global south, we've got Caribbeana, which is my favorite. I love it. We got DJ The Lion, and I love that Jamaican, that reggae. I love it. Everything. We've got Robin's Place, music from a women's perspective. WPFW is a beautiful cross section of the musical map of the world almost. So it is also wonderful that the world also gets represented in the public affairs programming. So this is why I love being a part of this station, because I've been enjoying the music for so many years. And now that I'm a grown up, I get to enjoy being a part of bringing information about the world that I want, that I hope you want to you. And that's what we're doing here tonight. If you are just joining, I'm Jackie Lukman. This is Darker Than Blue. And I am joined tonight by Ajamu Baraka. He is the organizer of the Black Alliance for Peace and of the North-South People's Centered Project for North-South Project for People-Centered Human Rights. I remember all the acronyms, then I forget what they stand for. And we are talking about their current campaign, just moved into the second phase to boycott the beautiful game, the World Cup. And Ajamu, we were talking about the strategy, the organizing behind it. Now let's get to the meat of what is going on here, because it's impossible for people who do follow the games and who do understand who all of the players from the countries are, people do understand that there's a serious political hypocrisy and problem around the games now, but there's always been a little bit of controversy with FIFA and working class and poor people and exploitation around the world. So that's always been kind of an issue. It was raised by international media a few years ago. And then, of course, there's always been the political way that FIFA and other international sporting institutions like the IOC and whatnot have quickly targeted, as you said on the other side of the break, quickly targeted Russia to remove them from participation in the games because of the situation with Ukraine. We remember that they banned South Africa from the games for a time because of apartheid, but there's a hesitation to do anything, to say anything about Israel. And that's odd, Ajamu, because not only has Israel been very blatant in their ethnic cleansing, using starvation as a weapon, rape as a weapon, and genocide, but they're also killing and kidnapping, just last week, Palestinian football players. So, what is the message for people who love this game, who are watching this entity both destroy people and culture and history in Gaza, and or at least the representation of a people's history in Gaza and now in Lebanon? How do we get people who are committed to this game also very committed to the political fight for the game, for taking the game back from the imperialist elements and putting it back into the hands of the people? And I guess I'm asking, what is the message to get people to bring the games back to the people and make it safe again for the people?
Well, we have to remind people of their common identity, their common membership with the rest of humanity. That people's lives matter. That we cannot allow ourselves to be lulled to sleep and silence in the face of massive, systematic violations against the rights and dignity of peoples around the world. And in this case, an ongoing genocide. So this call has to be a call to sort of um, cajole people to understand that they have a voice, and that while they might want to indulge in the mindless entertainment that sometimes these kind of games and other kinds of entertainment um, provides, we also have to remind ourselves that we are human beings living in a very serious moment in history, a moment in which we have a the US, that is attempting to desperately maintain its global hegemony with its allies from the West, who have seemed to have made a determination that in order to maintain the 500 plus years of European dominance, at least in parts of the world, I think globally, that they're prepared to murder, rape, and bomb, and destabilize any and everyone that's in their way, that they believe might undermine their objective of full spectrum dominance. And so we have to understand that. So, the Eurovision and the Olympics and the World Cup, all of these are things that we can't just enjoy as though these are normal times. times really were never really normal for some of us. But people have to understand that we're in this major transition. And so when we call for a international boycott of the games, it's not just about sports, but really it's about the failure of the internet. It's about the issue of international legitimacy. Will the global community continue to allow powerful Western nations to engage in this kind of lawlessness, to defy human rights, to undermine the dignity of peoples, to engage in mass murder? You know, we say that basically it has to be one standard for all people, and that we can't talk about, we can't twist up our mouths and talk about human rights as long as we see this systematic lawlessness emanating from just a few sources. Right now, the U.S. and Israel represent the most powerful uh, 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 lawless entities on this planet. And so we understand that people would prefer not to have to think about these kind of things. But we think about every day how it must feel for the Palestinian family living in tents where their homes used to be. We think about our political prisoners living underground here in the United States of America, in soundproof dungeons, subjected to the most horrific forms of psychological torture. We think about the fact that we have a sitting president sitting in a jail in New York. We can't run away from the reality that in our beloved Cuba, the people are being subjected to hours and hours of not having electric, that people are dying in hospitals in Cuba because of the inability to keep the generators going, because of the draconian embargo, blockage, siege of Cuba. We can't forget what's happening in Haiti as occupation forces are there undermining the demands on the part of Haitian people for a real democracy. And we're never going to allow them to normalize the systematic rounding up of human beings in the United States of America, disappearing them in these gulags, these ICE gulags in the United States, gulags that are privately owned, where profits are being generated with the bodies of human beings. We're not going to allow them to silence the voices of those of us who are concerned about the continued murder of Black people, African people, by the domestic army that we call the police. So we can't just suspend ourselves from reality. You know, white supremacists can engage in a denial of reality. They have a cognitive inability to deal with reality. That's why they're making so many fundamental mistakes. The oppressed, the colonized, the exploited, we don't have that luxury. When we engage in that kind of denial, we end up in gulags. We end up dead. So, we raise these issues, because we have to. It's part of the process of building opposition. This campaign is not just to raise the issue. The campaign is the process of building power, of building organization. We understand that the enemy operates on multiple fronts. This fourth front is a very important one because it has that ideological component. And so we have to confront them. We have to undermine the narrative of normality. We have to make sure that we don't allow them to create conditions in which this kind of behavior that the U.S., Israel, the European powers engage in will just be accepted. People will resign themselves to an idea that there just is no alternative. No, no, no. We confront, we struggle, And through that process of confrontation, of struggle, people understand that we are in fact the majority. And that when we organize and we have a clear mission and objectives and a vision, then we can win. That is what we're talking about also in this campaign to confront the US and to boycott the games, and in fact to boycott the US.
Yeah, I mean, because the this particular regime, this particular administration, since these people love the word regime so much, when they decide to talk about liberated countries like Venezuela and Cuba and China, countries that liberated their people from fascism. But these folks always call those governments regimes. So I'm calling this government a regime from now on because that's what it is. It is a capitalistic, oligarchic, white supremacist, settler colonial regime. It just is. And it's amazing that they have made it they've almost made it easy for people to boycott the games because this regime has imposed a $15,000 bond for people traveling to the US who to attend the games, but only people from certain countries. Imposed the travel ban for people basically to keep Muslims. Again, it's the Muslim travel ban 2.0 that was actually just struck down by a judge earlier today. But a part of that travel ban was also intended to keep undesirables from coming to the country to see. So I don't know who they thought was going to come. And then, of course, the foundational issue for a lot of people is that this year the ticket prices are just unimaginably expensive, completely out of the reach for the working class and poor masses who were able to save up before and attend. Now, all of those things have made it so ticket sales for the World Cup are in the toilet right now. So I'm not sure what these events are going to look like in these 11 cities, but do we care, Ajamu? Do we care how they're going to be? Do we care? Because does the turnout deter the tactics and the strategy of the campaign for any campaign?
No, because we know that basically in those cities where the games are going to take place, that there will be the deployment of ICE, of National Guard units. We know that the people will be subjected to harassment if they get inside the country. Uh, People need to understand, need to know about these kinds of draconian measures that the U.S. has imposed on people who are traveling or want to travel to the U.S. Where we have a situation where we have some of the teams that are qualified to play in the U.S. Are unable, that is, their fans are unable to attend because their nations are banned from travel to the U.S. These are the kind of things that in the past would have caused FIFA to withdraw the games from a country, but yet they continue. Not only do you have, and that bond thing was withdrawn also, but these are kind of things that U.S. was attempting to try to impose. It's still not clear if the proposal for people when they enter the U.S. with a valid visa to attend the games, it's not clear whether or not they still might be subjected to having their having their communication devices, phones and other things, scanned in order to make sure that they have the proper kinds of ideals in order to enter the U.S. And if they don't, they may be arbitrarily then deported. So you have countries that have actually even issued travel advisories, even from European countries have done the same thing, have issued travel advisories to their citizens, advising them that you got to be careful. You're going to a very dangerous environment, and that's is real, and that's the basis of, for example, some of the reports that were done by Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, that laid out some of the issues of security, the violation of rights in the U.S. But the difference between those two organizations and the North-South Project for People-Centered Human Rights is this. They say that the games can be still saved, and they use that term, if only there are some alterations, if there's improvements and protections, if ICE is limited, if the right to protest is respected, et cetera, et cetera. But for us, for the Black Alliance for Peace and the People-Centered and the Project for People-Centered Human Rights and the Anti-Fascist Football Coalition, these measures are inadequate, even if they were going to implement them, and they aren't, because they leave in place the central issue, and that is the normalization of imperial impunity. That's the difference in the politics. That basically is not just about the issue in the U.S. domestically. The fact of the matter that it is an unsafe place to be. There's no real security. That's why the Iranian team now has to train in Mexico. It is also this issue of international impunity. That's the politics that we have. So yeah, these are the kind of concerns that we are raising, Jackie, as we lay the foundation and learn from this effort to call for this boycott. Let's put the boycott thing in perspective also.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm a veteran of the anti-apartheid struggle. An essential part of that struggle was BDS against South Africa. Okay, don't let anybody tell you otherwise. That was a critical component in driving the races to the table in 1993. Okay, so we have a weapon there that boycotts are used to highlight these kinds of issues and to put international pressure on rogue states. So we have this call for the World Cup, and we are going to look into and put in place a campaign that will target, that is a BDS campaign against the United States of America.
You see how he dropped that? You see how he just dropped that? He just said it, dropped it, and just moved on. That's because that's how serious this is. I know you were not prepared for that, but you should be, because this is the way the rest of the world is seeing this country. When you have an international perspective, it's not just about making connections. It is, because you do need to know from the people who are on the ground in these countries that we hear so much negativity about. We need to know the truth from them. And that is why we have these international connections. It's also a way that we learn the organizing strategies that worked for them. We compare and see what we did. We adopt what might work, and they do the same with us. It's information sharing, it's culture sharing, it is strength in numbers, but it is also giving you a window into how the rest of the world really sees the United States. And most of the people in the world understand very well that the people in the United States, not the same as the government, but oddly enough, they also understand that we are deeply indoctrinated. And I think they feel kind of sorry for us, but we don't have time to feel sorry for ourselves. We have to organize, and we have to do our part to realize the future that we collectively want. That's what all of this organizing is about. On the other end of this empire, on the other side of it, what is the society that we are going to have? We have to model. We have to start working on what we want on the other side of this. Because guess what? You know who already is pretty clear on what they want this to be after this iteration of this empire is gone? The people who are doing this right now, they're clear on what they want on the other side of this. This is the organizing that we have to do to make sure that we are. So, Ajamu, how do our listeners and our viewers here on YouTube, how do they get involved in this campaign to boycott the World Cup and the U.S.?
to go to the website, people centered, uh, people centered human rights .com. And also go, of course, to the Black Alliance for Peace.com, and you could be connected to the website or to the page for the campaign. There you can get the latest information, but more importantly, you can endorse the campaign. And you can also join the North-South. You can join the North-South Project for People-Centered Human Rights, the network that we'll be building, the network for the advancement of people-centered human rights, where you can participate not only in this project, but in the work that we're going to be engaged in going beyond the World Cup.
To make sure, for those of you who are listening, that you have the website. It's spelled exactly how it sounds. People's Centered Human Rights. PEOPLESCENTERED, Human Rights. All one word, .com. And scroll down the page and you will see the Move the Games, Boycott the World Cup, Boycott the US campaign, and a link to the Black Alliance for Peace on that page. Sign the petition and follow on social media to keep up with all of the information and every next action from this campaign from the Black Alliance for Peace and all of our teams, the Haiti Americas team, the Asia Pacific team, the which one? Oh, the Africa team. What other team do we have, John?
I think that's Haiti team, North Africa team.
Mm-hmm.
We have the PE
Yes.
folks.
Political
Yeah,
education research, solidarity network. Listen,
yes.
we're not playing out here. We don't think we can save the world. We are trying to organize our people and trying to help our people model the kind of society we deserve on the other side of this empire. So a lot of this work is really convincing our people that we deserve people-centered human rights and nobody's going to win them for us but us. Ajamu
Exactly.
Baraka.
So let me just thank you. We just say that basically the games that the U.S. Plays is with the lives of millions of people who end up as victims of the U.S. We cannot allow FIFA and the U.S. to continue that. Boycott the U.S. Boycott the games.
Thank you so much, Ajamu. Thank you for listening to Darker Than Blue here on WPFW. Thank you for watching, everybody. Luta continua, the struggle continues, but if we keep struggling, I promise you, Victoria Acerta, victory is certain. Peace, y'all.